Coming to the light. For a very long time men and women wondered just what that meant. Many religions copied that phrase, trying to make people think they had that light. It was Thoth that first spoke of this light in his revelation. That light Thoth spoke of does not come to you in a church or religion. No, it can't. It will come to you only one way, and if things are not right in you, all you can see is the darkness of this world. Let us clearly understand what that light means. So to get a better picture, we have to go to the writings of Thoth to have a clear vision of what he was saying. In speaking of the creation of our solar system, he speaks of a time when everything was in disarray. Things were being created by the fire god and hardly nothing was organized. He tells us there was a chaos. Take note, for there were in the chaos an infinite darkness in the abyss or bottomless depth, and water, and a subtle spirit intelligible in power, and there went out the holy light, and the elements were coagulated from the sand out of the moist substance. So let me ask, is this the light he was speaking of? That answer is no, this is not the light he speaks of, but that was some good knowledge. No? Is it this? Well, let's see. Contemplate through me the world, and consider its beauty. See the hierarchy of the seven heavens and their order. See that all things are full of light. See the earth, settled in the midst of the all, the great nurse who nourishes all terrestrial creatures. All is full of soul, and all beings are in movement. Who has created these things? The one God, for God is one. You see that the world is always one, the sun, one, the moon, one, the divine activity, one, God too, is one. And since all is living, and life is also one, God is certainly one. Was that it? No, that's not it. Is it this? In the beginning the whole universe was a sea. Heaven on high had not been named, nor the earth beneath. Their begetter was Apsu, the father of the primordial deep, and their mother was Tiamat, the spirit of chaos. Universe is our solar system. Apsu is the fire god, our sun. No plain was yet formed, no marsh could be seen, the gods had no existence, nor had their fates been determined. Then there was a movement in the waters, and the deities issued forth. The deities are planets in our fire god's star system that he creates. The first who had being were the god Lachmu and the goddess Lachemu. Long ages went past. Then were created the god Anshar and the goddess Kishar. When the days of these deities had increased and extended, they were followed by Anu, god of the sky, whose consort was Anatu, and Ea, most wise and all-powerful, who was without an equal. Now Ea, god of the deep, was also Enki, lord of earth, and his eternal spouse, Damkina, was Gashan-Ki, lady of earth. The son of Ea and Damkina was Bel, who was Marduk, the Lord, who in time created mankind. Thus were the high gods established in power and in glory. These are times when heaven and earth was created. This teaching was told to us in early Sumerian history. Take note please, in those days, in the days when heaven and earth were created, in those nights, in the nights when heaven and earth were created, in those years, in the years when the fates were determined, when the Anuna gods were born, when the goddesses were taken in marriage, when the goddesses were distributed in heaven and earth, when the goddesses became pregnant and gave birth, when the gods were obliged to eat their food in the dining halls, the senior gods oversaw the work, the Anunnaki rulers, while the minor gods, the Igis, were bearing the toil. The gods were digging the canals and piling up the silt in Harali. The gods, crushing the clay, began complaining about this life. The time period spoken of here, last from the time when Apsu the fire god was all alone before he created our planet Tiamat. In those years, in the years when the fates were determined, means the time when it was decided how many planets were to be created and their faith would be what orbit around the fire god were they to have. Now a lot was determined at those early creation periods, even the time the Anuna gods came into existence. Please don't confuse the creation of the Anuna gods with the creation of the gods called planets. The Anuna gods are flesh and blood beings that came to earth and mixed with man and created a being called mankind. That person was a kind of a man but wasn't man. The history book tells us there were 7 races of man created by our fire god on planet Earth. And none of those 7 races will ever be destroyed by any force. But this still isn't the light Thoth was speaking of. Come on, let's get a better grip on his mind. Here is the info from an intelligent mind. Take note please. Knowledge of God descended to us, and when it arrived, it was rejected by ignorance. Knowledge of joy descended to us, and when it arrived, sadness fled completely from those willing to receive it. So knowledge of God has something to do with it. But ignorant people always reject the knowledge of God. He says, one cannot teach divine things, if one has not learned them. But we cannot discover through human genius that which is beyond human nature. One can therefore behold the divine light, as through the sunlight one beholds the sun itself. But the divine light of mind never infuses the soul, unless the soul itself is turned toward the mind of God, as the moon toward the Sunday. The soul is not turned toward the mind unless it itself becomes mind, and the soul does not become mind before it lays aside the deceptions of the senses and the clouds of fantasy, for which reason if we cast aside the mists of the senses and of fantasy, we will then regain in the depths of mind. Oh yes, this is it. One can therefore behold the divine light, as through the sunlight one beholds the sun itself. Oh yes, this is it. However, something has to be done to receive this divine light. Take note, the soul is not turned toward the mind unless it itself becomes mind, and the soul does not become mind before it lays aside the deceptions of the senses and the clouds of fantasy. Wow, this can't happen to us unless we put away fantasy. That could only mean things that are not real and are the things of fantasy that religions dwell on. What I'm about to show you is from the religion of the mind and can only be understood in your clear mind. There is no religion you have to listen to or book of rule you have to obey. Notice, listen, O man, to this mystery. Long in the past, before you were man born, I dwelled in ancient Atlantis. There in the temple, I drank of the wisdom, poured as a fountain of light from the dweller. I was given the key to ascend to the presence of light in the great world. I stood before the Holy One enthroned in the flower of fire. Veiled was he by the lightnings of darkness, else my soul by the glory have been shattered. Enki is the one showing him. Then from the feet of his throne like the diamond, rolled forth 4 rivers of flame from his footstool, rolled through the channels of clouds to the man world. Filled was the hall with spirits of heaven. Wonder of wonders was the starry palace. Above the sky, like a rainbow of fire and sunlight, were formed the spirits. Sang they the glories of the Holy One. Then from the midst of the fire came a voice, "Behold the glory of the first cause." I beheld that light, high above all darkness, reflected in my own being. I attained as it were, to the God of all gods, the Spirit Sun, the sovereign of the sun's spheres. Again came the voice, "There is one, even the first, who has no beginning, who has no end, who has made all things, who govern all, who is good, who is just, who illumines, who sustains." Then from the throne, there poured a great radiance, surrounding and lifting my soul by its power. Swiftly I moved through the spaces of heaven, I was shown the mystery of mysteries, I was shown the secret heart of the cosmos. Carried was I to the land of Arulu, stood before the lords in their houses. They opened the doorways so I might glimpse at the primeval chaos. Shuddered my soul to the vision of horror, shrank back my soul from the ocean of darkness. Then I saw the need for the barriers, saw the need for the lords of Arulu. Only they with their infinite balance could stand in the way of the inpouring chaos. Only they could guard God's creation. Okay, let me confess, what I did was show you what he saw, probably through a telescope, or it could have been a movie. Remember, he said they opened a door and he said, I was shown the secret heart of the cosmos. So what did he see? The word cosmos is used to describe the Earth at times, and also sometimes it's used to describe our solar system. So was he looking at the sun? He had already said our sun is an image of the Father. So he is either talking about the sun or something bigger. Was it the second God? No, it's something that creates with fire and is called the God of light. So what is it? He said this, I attained as it were, to the God of all gods, the Spirit Sun, the sovereign of the sun's spheres. What is a sun sphere? Well, we have one in our solar system, our sun. So it's something more powerful than our sun. He said, I attained as it were, to the God of all gods, the Spirit Sun, the sovereign of everything. Where do we find that Spirit Sun? This is where you have to listen to your mind and not to anyone else. This is where you use your eyes and mind. This will end the first part. On to the second.